Welcome in, everybody. Our second episode of Logistically Speaking. Appreciate all the kind words from our debut episode as we work out the kinks. I think it went pretty well, though, and we appreciated everyone's feedback. So hopefully you keep enjoying our episodes. We're going to keep them as informative as we can, and we are going to try to keep you entertained a little bit as well. I'm Mike Esposito, Director of Global Sales here at RIM. I'm your host for the show, and today we are pleased to be joined by our Corporate Manager of Regulatory and Compliance, Stacia Keegan.
Hello.
We're going to talk about tariffs, and I know you're excited about that, but we will actually, there's new information, so we want to keep you updated on that. We also have the CEO from our partner, Freight Systems Limited in India and the Middle East, Jonathan Phillips, joining us. He's here in person, so we wanted to have him here, and we're going to start with you, John A. first.
Sure.
Thank you for being here. Thanks for
having
coming
me.
in. But I wanted to give you the floor for a few minutes. You could tell us a little bit about Freight Systems and what you guys do and how you are partners with RIM.
Sure. So we're a freight forwarding logistics company founded in Dubai. My dad started the business in '88. Moved from India for what should have been a couple-year gig and ended up being there for 45 years, which is pretty.
That's how it works in this business,
Yeah.
right?
So started it, and our main regions really are the Middle East and India. So started Dubai and then kind of grew from there into India. That's where we're from.
Yep.
And then Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka.
Mm-hmm.
We have supporting offices in other places, but those are the real engines for us. And the RIM connection kind of came out as a result of a mutual connect, Darren Hart,
Yep.
at TCF Australia.
Our
who
partner
introduced
in
us.
Australia. Yep.
Yep. So we'd worked with Darren a long time ago through Vanguard, knew him very well, and then worked with him as Freight Systems with TCF.
Yep.
And he knew we needed, someone in Germany and the US and needed some help over there. So that's how the conversation started. And it was maybe 4-5 years ago
Mm-hmm.
where I met Rob and Tim and we talked and decided to start something with Germany. So we started building air freight consoles out of Germany into Dubai and into India. And from there, moved into the US where we do some stuff now. So that's how we started.
Yeah. No, and it's very similarly built companies. I think that's why we work so well together.
Yeah.
So Freight Systems is a great partner for us. And, we do a lot of work to them, not only in the Middle East, but India. And India's been in the news, which is the other reason I wanted to have John on.
Yep.
So we're going to talk about all that as we go on. Our main topics today, we want to give you the updates in the industry, what's been going on with the tariffs and the national news. We want to talk specifically about India and also in the Middle East. But so thank you for that, John. Thank you for coming in. Stacia, we're going to start our tariff discussion with you. And we work very closely together.
Yes, we do.
We've
Yes,
had
we do.
several roundtables for our customers,
Which we've had to change at the last minute sometimes.
which we often have had to change at the last minute. But I want you to let everyone know, in a general sense, how are we keeping up with all this? What methodology do we use? I know it's chaos for you guys, and I know that we are we're quickly approaching triple digits in number of customer advisories
Yes,
sent out, but
yes.
it's been nuts, basically.
Well,
right?
yes, we've sent out 62 customer advisories since the administration was sworn in. We'll be sending out our 63rd this afternoon. And that's in regards to the Section 301 exclusions that's going to end August 31st. So, we've been trying to keep everybody abreast of what's happening.
Yeah, but it's important, I think, too, for people listening and watching to understand. Normally, U.S. Customs is very deliberate. They move very slowly. They publish a federal register. Once they publish, we then normally go to market with that. Now, our director of regulatory and compliance, Kim Robke, who's not here today, but she once famously told you and I when we were preparing for a thing that we will not be sending out customer advisories off of social media tweets. Well, guess what?
And that's changed.
We have had to change that. And the reason is not that we are trying to get ahead of U.S. Customs, is that the news comes so fast and furious these days, whether it's a news conference at the White House, a tweet, a Truth Social post, you name it. We often have to send out things to you, our customers, basically saying, listen, this was put out on social media today by the president. Here's what it says. We will keep you advised. And that is not because we are trying to jump the gun on anything. It's just because we're getting questions immediately on
Right. I mean, and that's how the information is coming now.
Yeah.
You know, we get an executive order. If there's a post, then there's an executive order or a fact sheet.
Yep.
So, you know, we have to inform everybody what we have.
Yeah. And we'll come back to how their stuff is released, because we have an example I want to get to first. But I want to ask John from the India side, from the Middle East side, as a foreign agent that deals with the U.S. consistently, how is the Indian media covering this? How do you receive this information when President Trump has an executive order on something? How are you receiving that on the origin side, and how do you guys deal with it with the India politicians as well?
Well, I think it's received in the same mediums that you guys get it. You know, I think the world is so, global now that we see that same information.
Right.
And I think, of course, there's an Indian media spin to a lot of this stuff too, right? But I think the overall sentiment in India right now is still positive. And it's just about, it's a little bit of uncertainty as to what's going to happen. So I think what we've seen from our side is that, what we think is that I think India, we've dealt with Russia for a long time. We bought oil from them from a long time, and the government stance is that's not going to change, as a partner for them. So it's about now what kind of a solution comes out of that that's a beneficial thing to both sides. But we have seen a slowdown from the big exporters out there, because there's a lot of automotive manufacturing, pharmaceutical, electronics, and those big established ones have kind of seen a slowdown, which I think some of it is just temporary, like what we saw during COVID and the price increases with the freight. It's just, no one knows what's going to happen and settle down, so they're taking a pause. But there has also been some increase because a lot of the new manufacturers coming in, it's still an economical option, even with the tariffs, versus some of the other places they were sourcing from.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag from that side. I view it overall that it's probably going to be a bump in the road, but it's not going to stop the Indian manufacturing story that's going to grow. It's just, it may derail it for a bit, or may reduce the magnitude that we thought was going to be there, but it will still continue.
Yeah. No, and I think India, going forward, will be a larger partner than it once was of the United States in terms of manufacturing and trade partnership. That was certainly trending that way, and I know the commentary is that. I think the word uncertainty that you use is an important word, because I know outside of a few flashes this year, people are hesitant to commit to things when they don't know what's going to happen. So that uncertainty has certainly caused some of that. And, to go back to Stacia, when we talk about uncertainty and some of the news that comes out, I want to ask you about Section 232. It's steel and aluminum. Almost everybody, even if it's just components, deals in steel and aluminum. Well, and in the news business, we call this the old Friday news dump. That's where you release something at the end of the day on Friday, because most people have already checked out. Nobody's paying attention. But we had a nice Friday news dump 2 Fridays ago about Section 232.
On the 15th, we sure did. And it came at 7:26 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when the guidance came in from CBP. And it went into effect 12:01 that Monday.
On Monday. So literally, the release was Friday night after hours, after office hours, and we were expected to then pivot immediately Monday morning to do this.
Yes, and it covers about 407 product categories, and added to the list of derivatives, steel and aluminum products, right? So, and some of those things are like cranes, bulldozers, heavy equipment, furniture, compressors, industrial products. Exercise equipment, I mean, just a wide variety of goods. And on top of that, 104 HTS classifications are on both lists, or 124, excuse me. 124 codes are on both lists. So if your goods have both steel and aluminum, you're going to have to separate that, and you're going to have to claim that for both.
And I know, you are the front lines for our questions. I'm sure that Monday and Tuesday morning, you're on the phone all day dealing with our customers. Hey, what's this? What's this?
Right.
And again,
there was no in-transit provision if the goods were on the water. I mean, at least not to date.
Correct.
So if your goods were on the water and they were on that list, well, then you're going to pay the 50% on the steel or aluminum if it qualifies. Yeah. So
and more is likely to be added to this list. Do you think?
Yes, I think so, because under the Commerce Department steel and aluminum inclusion process, the general public can submit inclusion requests, and the next window will open in September. And that'll be published in the Federal Register.
So John, on the tariff thought or on the tariff topic, as we talk long term, on the India side, on the Middle East side, on the agent side, what are you hearing in terms of like what is India doing in reaction to what the U.S. is doing? Like, for example, if we're exporting stuff to India, is that reciprocal tariffs? Are they? They're trying to cooperate basically. Is I think the gist, right?
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the first phase where those reciprocal tariffs kind of came out, and we're a bigger exporter than an importer from the U.S. With the U.S. So it's just the nature of the beast.
Yep.
So that impact's gonna be very different. So they started that way, but I think with this one they're not really going down that path. Just trying to find, I think, a path forward through how do we negotiate that forward.
Right.
But I think it's also forced India and a lot of countries to look at how do they diversify their business bases.
Right.
There's been a lot more regional, ASEAN, European trade discussions. The BRIC nations are coming together a lot more and just kind of finding how do you do more trade, alongside those partners. Now they've kind of set a policy alongside rupee denominated trade with a lot of countries to kind of make that easier, signing more foreign trade agreements. So trying to make sure they diversify, not as an insurance policy, but just as a long-term plan so that these things don't hamper their story long-term.
Sure. Yeah, and I think too, the U.S. is obviously a huge market, and it was very easy to do business with the U.S. in terms of the barriers to trade, and now it's getting a little harder. So that logically makes sense that what would be happening around the rest of the world.
And I think, sorry, just to jump in on the Middle East side, it's a bit of a different story there because, the Middle East, the tariffs really aren't, anything big with the Middle East aside from the steel one that affects a couple of them.
Yeah.
But it's still a small part of that trade flow. And they're primarily importing countries.
Right.
But I think the big difference there, or the big issues there, are the knock-on effects, because what this has done is drop the price of oil, which is a big source of the income that funds a lot of their activities. And secondly, a lot of these countries have currencies that are pegged to the dollar.
Right.
So as the dollar has devalued, their import costs have just gone up. So we're seeing local consumer pricing increase, and it'll slow down the economy because of the oil part. That's the knock-on effect of this.
Right. No, and there's all of these secondary effects to what's happening.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned a lot of them, which it's important that we acknowledge that this is because of what's happening on the trade front and with the tariffs. So Stacia, back to the 232.
Yeah.
Customs enforcement and the valuations of said things.
Right.
Can we talk about how, I know a lot of people are asking us, well, how are they doing this? How are they enforcing this? What about the values, things like that? What can you tell us about that?
Well, we do understand that there was revisions on June 3rd proclamation that pretty much said, okay, you need to separate, the non-steel from the steel or the non-aluminum from the non-aluminum. And it was suggested that the non-steel, non-aluminum additive products or the cost of converting aluminum or steel into the derivative product, labor costs could be itemized out to avoid assessment of those duties, but there has been no clear guidance whatsoever on that. Nothing beyond Section 232 frequently asked questions. So we just have been telling our importers, we encourage you to be prepared, have your documentation to back up and to support your evaluation of your goods. And it will also, it's a good idea to talk to a trade attorney. Make sure that you're assessing your value properly. So you don't have, because CPB is really looking hard at the 232.
Yes. No, and in layman's terms, right? So we have our guidance based off of what we have from customs, but they haven't published any, hey, this is what you do, this is exactly how you have to do it,
Not
blah,
at all.
blah, blah.
It's been very vague in regards to that, and we get a lot of questions from a lot of importers on it.
We get a ton of questions, and I speak in this as somebody who does sales, and I talk to my customers every day. There's a lot of things out there that people can try to do, and a lot of people have tried to do, whether it's receive goods as DDP, or your supplier says they can get it to you cheaper, and you somehow either reduce or avoid those tariffs. And we are here to tell you, well, I'm here to tell you, and I'm going to ask Stacia about it in a second. Customs is not overlooking that at all. If they're doing something, I'm going to call it nefarious, whatever it is, if they're doing something underhanded to try to get away from or get away with not paying these duties, these extra duties, and customs catches you, you're going to be in trouble. And not only that, you're going to pay penalties, and then you're going to be flagged. So
Right.
there's a whole lot of reasons not to do that. But in general, if your supplier is telling you, hey, I can ship this DDP and I'll save you 50%, whatever, I'm making up numbers. But the idea is they're going to do something to get around what the new rules are. I would strongly suggest that you not do that, because in the end, it's still your products. You are receiving the goods, even if you're not directly the importer of record.
And CBP is paying attention.
Yes.
They are watching. I mean, honestly, we've seen more 28s and 29s this year.
What are 28s and 29s?
So a CF 28 is a request for information from
Okay.
customs. A 29 is a notice of action. They are taking action.
Right.
So we've seen a lot more of that so far this year.
And I know, and listen, I get it, it's extra cost, but we definitely know that the worst thing you could do, especially if you're a larger volume person, is to get caught and be in the crosshairs of customs, because that will cause you nothing but problems. I think we've made our point, but I just want to make sure to throw that out there. John, as we talk about India, I know we've talked over the years, and I've worked here for 21 years now. India is on the rise as a manufacturer. We've always heard about the infrastructure. I know some of it is being worked on. I know some of it is good. Some of it needs to be better. What can you tell us about what's going on in India with the infrastructure of the country?
Yeah, so I think, the good thing is the government has understood and is starting to address those needs. The Indian infrastructure is still a problem, right? I mean, and the airports and ports are starting to get modernized, starting with the airports. They're doing a lot to build these logistics zones and logistics parks to make it an easier trade flow. But I think the biggest issue right now is the inland transportation and that infrastructure. That still needs to change, because if you look at India, the logistics cost to the GDP is about 13 to 14%. Whereas if you look at it in other, more modern or more advanced manufacturing countries, it's probably 8-9%. So that is something that needs to change and needs to improve to have a faster go-to-market, have an easier process, lower the cost of it. So there are steps that are being taken. Now, that to me is going to take some time still, because it's a big beast that needs to be addressed. And you're seeing it change in the bigger cities, which is good. But a lot of the manufacturing is still out in the smaller and the second-tier cities, which needs to be addressed a little bit more.
Overall, though, it's in a incremental improvement, right?
Absolutely.
And I know from when I started, it was in a certain spot, and it's in a much better spot now. But there's still what you're saying. There's still room for improvement.
Absolutely, and I think it's definitely way better than what it was. And you're seeing that increase of manufacturing and focus coming in. You have 3 or 4 major verticals that are driving that. You have the high-tech electronics, you have pharmaceutical, you have automotive. And if you look at the automotive space, which we're pretty entrenched in as freight systems. There's so much OEM manufacturing and supplier manufacturing that's happening in India, and a lot of expertise in that. So it is a big source of that. I think it's going to grow. It's just these are some of the hurdles that we need to address and move forward to do it.
So John had mentioned India buying oil from Russia. That was one of the things I wanted to ask. Both India and Brazil got on the list, so to speak, for the president.
First.
Brazil first, and then India, though, but where they have gotten additional tariffs because of certain things. So I wanted to at least talk about that briefly. So the Brazil one.
Brazil was 40% on top of the 10%, right?
Yep.
But it's a separate tariff. But at the same time, there were hundreds of items that were left off that were excluded from that last, like, oil, iron, steel, nuts, orange juice. And those are some of the top exports from Brazil to begin with. So, and then with the Russian oil, as you know, that's supposed to take effect the 27th of August, this week at 12:01 a.m. We've not seen anything to challenge that yet, but we will see. I do know it's a 25% IEPA separate from the 25%, so they're calling it a Russian oil tariff as opposed to the 25% on the reciprocal.
So India is a 25% reciprocal, and then plus, as of the 27th, as for what we know now, this 25% Russian oil tariff that we have. So, and I will say this, and I'll actually ask you for your thoughts. I know in some of the industry things that I read and that we've talked about, it is thought that maybe that was something that was, I mean, I know it was something that was designed to maybe drive some negotiations on the Russian front with Putin and Trump. But as of now, we still don't have any, you know, that is happening effective 2 days from now.
Yeah.
What is your commentary or thought on that? What's happening?
I would second that.
Yeah.
You know, I think that is part of it, you know, trying to find solutions to these world, you know, issues.
Yep.
And that being a big one.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that India is providing funds to Russia for that was a point that was probably trying to be negotiated.
Yep.
You know, now how that goes, where that results in, it's a black box.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what's going to really happen on that front.
Yeah.
I would hope that there's some sort of a compromise negotiation that is, or a compromise deal that is struck, so that the economies can continue to grow and trade and work together. But again, we'll see.
We're all just kind of
we'll see.
waiting to find out, right? No, and we're going to get to China in a second, but I want to, while we're talking about the negotiations with India, and I know more, it's seemingly year on year, more and more people are sourcing from India. And we've talked about the infrastructure, but I think the supplier base in India is also growing too. Is that not correct?
Absolutely. You know, I think a few factors have been driving it. You know, one is the China Plus One strategy, where we saw, you know, as a result, I think more of COVID, where, you know, so many industries and countries were kind of just, you know, stopped or recapped from just a result of not having their suppliers being able to deliver. So the diversification strategy was part of it. I think the other part of it is the Indian economy itself domestically. You know, India has a very large, actually the largest young population, you know, a huge middle class population that's consuming more and more. So the domestic consumption itself has driven a lot of the need to have, you know, local manufacturing. And then the government is also taking a lot of steps with their Make in India initiatives. They have a lot of, you know, policies and investment programs to help fund and grow domestic manufacturing, to allow and kind of attract foreign companies to come in and set up manufacturing bases out there. So a lot of those things have kind of driven that story, you know, a lot more, which has been very good for India and will continue to be.
Yep. Yeah, and you mentioned the China Plus One strategy. I want to ask you about China. We saw the pause
the 90-day
extended.
Pause.
The 90-day pause extended another 90.
Right now, 12:01 a.m. on November 10th is where we're at, unless a deal is met in the middle. So yeah, currently it said 10% is the reciprocal, but I mean, you have to remember we're also still paying 20% on top of that, plus any Section 232. You know, all those new items that were added, like I said, furniture, exercise equipment, those things are now getting that 50%, along with that 30 and 10 in some places. So
Go ahead. Sorry.
It just depends on how it plays out.
The positive on the pause is it allows, you know, so essentially November 10th, you said, right? So that takes us through pretty much this calendar year. Any of our retail partners, that covers your year, right? You're going to be good for the holidays. You're going to be good heading into 2026. It's still an extra 30%, as you mentioned, on top of what it used to be, but it's not 150% that it was. It basically allows this year's business to continue. And then, again, we'll see what happens, but that extra 30%, you know, it's not nothing. And
no, it adds up.
I was reading something the other day I wanted to mention. It's a Goldman Sachs study. I've seen a lot of it too about how the tariffs are affecting the economy. Well, this Goldman Sachs study said right now, only about 15% of these extra costs are being passed on to consumers. That being, companies didn't want to make knee-jerk reactions. They didn't want to raise their prices too suddenly. They wanted to give a wait and see how things are going to play out. As we see how this is playing out, and it doesn't look like any of this is going anywhere, what this study suggests is that within the next few months, that number will go from 15% of these extra costs being absorbed by consumers to 65% being absorbed by consumers. So if you're starting to see your retail costs raise, your food costs raise, I know I went grocery shopping the other day, and my coffee was way more than it used to be. Well, and that's tariffs, right? I mean, that's how this works. And I was cursing the tariffs as I was buying coffee, but that's I use that as an easy example, but you're going to see that coming in the third and fourth quarter. And if I'm talking to importers, you certainly understand what's happening, because that's what's happening in our market too. So John, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the Middle East. I wanted
Yep.
to talk to you because we don't often talk about the Middle East
Yep.
as a trading partner,
Mhm.
with the exception of oil. But
Mhm.
you mentioned there are definitely opportunities on the export side and certainly in some markets on the import side to deal with the
Yeah.
Middle East as well.
Yeah. Well, the Middle East has predominantly been an importing market. I think we're seeing some manufacturing now coming out of, the UAE. Saudi Arabia does some, but there is, and it's not a huge economy base or population base, I
Yep.
would say, not economy base, but that demand is there. And they've always had strong importing ties with, all the major partners, be it China, be it Europe, be it India being a massive one for them.
Yep.
But the U.S. has always been a long partner. You look at engineering goods, you look at, automotive, you look at just even spare parts, oil and gas machinery is a huge trade. So there's so many different verticals, retail,
Mm-hmm.
Alongside that. And I think that's going to continue to grow. So that we haven't seen any sort of slowdown on. And in the Middle East, we see that continue to grow. It's just a matter of, again, the knock-on effects of those costs going up, how
Yep.
much that'll grow by.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an interesting market, and I'm glad that you brought that up because it's a point to consider. Depending on how things play out, we'll see what happens. One other thing I wanted to mention before we wrap things up, the de minimis provision ends on August 29th. That is anything under $800 can come in duty free. So we've already seen several parcel services and mail services say they're not going to ship stuff into the U.S. because of that, because that expires on the 29th. So basically, buying stuff and having it shipped directly to your home from wherever, if it was under $800, it used to be duty free. That is no longer allowed. That is part of the new rules. So wanted to at least mention that. That's happening this week. The news never stops, it seems.
not.
And we'll keep you posted with our blasts as we do them.
Yes.
But as we wrap up, and I wanted to start with John because it's very cool. So you have a lot. You grew up in India and the Middle East. Your business is there, but you have a ton of Chicago connections, which I think is very cool.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Dubai.
Yep.
Went to the American school from the 6th grade on, and went to Northwestern as a result of that.
Yep.
Out here. So, was here from, it'll date me, but 2001, 2005, I was in school out here, and then worked downtown for 6 years. Met my wife, who was from Chicago, from Arlington Heights actually.
Yep.
And then I moved back home in 2011, but as a result of going to school here, having family here, we spend our summers out here. And we have a 2.5-year-old, so
Yep.
get out of the Dubai heat and enjoy, well, for us, what is a cooler
Yeah.
environment, and you guys complain about it, but it's great. Summer out here, and we split our time between, Evanston, Wilmette, and Arlington Heights. And it was funny because last summer, we had, at that point our son was 1.5 years, and in my last week out here, we ended up at one of the pools, just hanging out, and I didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't really see, and I was just following him around. Then I look up, and Mike's standing right in front of me, so we talk, and then my wife goes, I grew up here. How do you know someone? Like, you haven't, like, what? You've been here a week. How do you already know someone here?
This was the most random thing ever. So, I know John from business, right? I mean, we work with freight systems. We have for a number of years. I've met you a number of occasions over the years. But this is literally out of left field. We're at a pool in Arlington Heights, where I happen to live also. And I'm literally I don't even remember what I'm doing, but you're a tall guy, so you stand out. And I'm like, holy cow, that's John from Freight Systems. So, we went over, but it's like of all the random
Right.
And you started chasing my boss around. So,
so that was a random connection. But no, Freight Systems, and John's here a lot during the summer. We work very closely with you guys, so I appreciate that information and for you guys for coming on.
Absolutely.
Fun summer stuff for you as we wrap things up here? Anything?
We have our camper up in Iowa now, in Bellevue, and it's a lovely place right on the Mississippi River, and we've been going up there a lot.
Very
Closer
cool.
to our daughter, who goes to University of Iowa. So.
Okay, so there you go. Big Ten football or no?
No.
Not interested?
No.
Maybe someday.
Someday, maybe.
I always enjoyed Big Ten football. You're Northwestern, so we
Yeah.
can. I'm Illinois. We're actually good this year, I think. So we'll find that out. So maybe one of these days we'll get you to an Iowa game.
All right.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, summer I coach baseball again for my son's team. This is actually going to be my last year. This was my last year coaching. He's aged into real coaches, which is not me. So sadly, that will be the end of it. We've already started doing some fall baseball, just sideline cheering, which is a little odd. I'm going to be honest with you, but we'll get through it. So that's about all we have for this week. We appreciate everybody joining. Smash that subscribe button. Use your kids' YouTube lingo there. We'll be on every month. And again, we'll try to have interesting and newsworthy topics for you every month. So John Phillips, Stacia Keegan, thank you very much. Sarah Pack and Alex Kolowski, thank you for helping get everything set up. We appreciate it. Until next month.
Thank you,
We'll
guys.
talk to you then. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.